What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to the bench for another episode of our 1/72nd scale Academy PBY Catalina for the Pearl Harbor group build. Today we're going to jump right back on in, so let's go ahead, get this started. As you can see, we have the aircraft all nicely painted up. I'm digging how the pre-shade is showing through the top coat, so I'm really liking that. We do have to come in though today and paint the black leading edges of the wings, the tail, and the tailplanes. That all has to be that kind of flat black, and I believe those are like de-icing boots, so those have to be painted on, and we're going to need to go ahead and mask to make sure we have a very nice clean line. So that's kind of the first thing on the list. We need to go ahead and start off doing some masking. Not necessarily the most fun time to go ahead and have on the bench, but it is necessary, so we're going to go ahead and take care of that today. I have my instructions here from Wolfpack, and it looks like the version that I am building, they do show those de-icing boots, so we need to go ahead and paint them on. I'll be using some flat black by Tamiya and my usual assortment of different tape. So using some Tamiya masking tape, we'll use some Scotch blue painter's tape and some Frog painter's tape as well. So let's go ahead and jump into our first time lapse and start off here masking all the leading edges. Then I want to come in and I want to paint them up with that flat black, and hopefully if my masks hold, we'll have a very nice clean demarcation line between the black and that light blue. So let's go ahead and get this started. Let's have some fun, guys. Alright everybody, so we are back, and as you can see, the front leading edges of the wings, the tail, and the tailplanes are all nicely painted flat black. I love Tamiya paint. It honestly is just beautiful to work with. Also, the masking held up nicely, so I don't have any leaks underneath the masking tape, very clean lines between the black and that light blue and gold gray, so we're looking pretty decent with that. Also, I went ahead and took extra time and masked off areas that might be susceptible to overspray. I typically miss 1 or 2 spots and then I end up getting overspray somewhere, but so far I haven't found anything that points to that. I think I was just careful enough that I don't have any overspray, so I'm very happy about that. Don't have to worry about coming back and touching up a bunch of my original top coat. Aces, I'll consider that a win. Now we need to go ahead and move forward though with some additional detail painting and some installation of some parts, because I want to try to get as much on here as possible so that we can overcoat the entire aircraft with gloss coat. So the next time we come back, we can go ahead and do some decaling. That's going to be kind of the next big step. Then of course, weathering, and we should be on our way to finishing off this project. So very excited for that. I'm going to go ahead and just pull off the rest of the masks, and I'm hoping I won't find any overspray or I won't find any sort of leaks or anything. And we'll be good to go ahead and move on with some of the detail painting and get those parts installed. So let's go ahead and keep on. Now I'm going to start off here with some painting for the exhausts. Now there's 2 exhaust stacks per engine, and I'm going to go ahead and paint them up with some of this rust color. I thinned it out with just a little bit of Vallejo. We're just going to go ahead and brush paint both of the exhaust stacks. Now I do have to go ahead and clean up a couple of these areas and these parts. I do notice that this kit does have some flash and some seam lines in places you don't really want them. So I'm going to go ahead and just use my X-Acto knife and my hobby files. We're just going to sand off and scrape off any sort of imperfection, and then we can go in and come in and paint them all up with that rust color. It's a little bit bright in terms of rust, but that's okay. I think we're going to come in later on and we'll overcoat them with some nice powder, and that should go ahead and get them looking the part. So this shouldn't be too hard to do. And once these are all nicely painted up and they are dried, we'll go ahead and install them into the tops of the engines. I think they should just drop right on in. And lastly, I want to go ahead and get the wing supports finally glued in place. I have kind of held back on putting these in up until now because I wanted to go ahead and mask off those leading edges, and I knew that having these installed would be very, very difficult to go ahead and mask off the front demarcation line between the black and that gray color. So I've kept them off until now. I figure, you know what, let's just go ahead and toss them on. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't put them on at this point. That way we can come in, we can touch up if there's any issue or any imperfections, sand them down, take a little bit of super glue, kind of shore them up a bit more, and then we should be good to go ahead and overcoat everything with gloss. So let's go ahead and jump into our second time lapse. I want to fix up these wing supports, get them all dialed in, get them filled up with some super glue to make sure they don't go anywhere, sand them down, get that all touched up. Then I want to go ahead and wash the engine faces with some of our Tamiya panel liner. Not really that big of a deal. I want a little shadow in there though, so that's going to be a good way to get that. And then let's paint up the propellers. We've got the hubs, we need yellow tips on each of the blades, and then we'll go ahead and install them into the engines and see how we go from there. So onwards and uppers, guys, let's go ahead and get this thing all finished up and see how we do. Let's push on. All right, everybody, so we are back, and as you can see, the PBY is looking pretty decent, all glossy, ready for decals. I want to give it a little bit more time to cure, but next episode, that'll be our first thing, get those decals on. But I will say I had some trouble with the engines. When I mounted these propellers, they didn't really want to go on very well. In fact, this left engine literally shot the propeller clean off of the spindle. It hit a wall, broke off one of the blades, and I had to go ahead and hunt for a replacement because I couldn't find the original. I did have this P47 blade that I had here, chopped that off, recontoured it, glued it on, so it looks okay. It's not 100% perfect, but you can't really tell, especially when they're spinning, you're not going to notice a difference. So that actually worked out okay. For the right motor, that actually got pushed into the cowling, even though I glued the crap out of it, it just got pushed in anyway. So I had to open up the cowling, pull the wires back out, re-solder the motor. As you can see, a couple of the wires a little shorter because I needed to pull more wire. Good thing I had extra. I did end up putting on this brass rod, which will act as a stand for our base, whatever that may end up being. And then, yeah, we just went ahead and buttoned everything up. Honestly, though, I'm not really sure what to go with for that base. I've been thinking of a couple of different ideas. One idea I did have was my original idea, which was having it a very large base and having the aircraft as if it came off the launching ramp and it was sitting in the harbor, maybe idling up its engines, getting ready to taxi out. That's not really going to, I think, be possible because of just the size of this aircraft. That's more like for 1/144 scale. That would be a little bit better. This case, though, I'm going to have to still do some form of base, and I'm kind of leaning towards doing something as if the aircraft is taking off because the propellers are spinning a lot faster than I initially thought they would have. So I might have to change up my idea just a little bit. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing because I've always wanted to do something taking off out of the water, and that would be a whole different learning curve for working with resin and working with, moving water, that sort of thing. So that might be interesting to try, but I need to do a little more research before I really kind of pin it down. Now, like I mentioned before, the engines did kind of give me some issue. The one actually sheared off his propeller and shattered that one. Talked about that already. But the other engine on the right side got pushed into the cowling, and I had to go ahead and pull that back out. And like I mentioned, I had to actually switch out the motor entirely because the wires got pulled out of the back of the motor trying to fish it out so I could reattach it to the cowling. It was a big mess. But I went ahead and doctored it up and just replaced the motor with my last spare that I had. And now it spins really, really well. It really does work. It works really well. It spools up very quickly. It stops very quickly. But I think either something happened or the motor requires a little bit of different power supply because I can't run a resistor on that one particular motor. I have to run a resistor on the left motor, but not on the right. If I put one on the right motor, it completely kills it. It doesn't even operate. But without a resistor, I'm able to flip it on and it works fine. It spins rather quickly though, but it does spin. As you can see, it does work. They do both spin. The right motor is almost instant on, instant off. The left motor takes a little bit of some time to spool up and also slow down, but you can feel the air coming off of these. They're pretty powerful little motors and they work, which is awesome. Probably should have redone the propeller mounting system because the hole there in the back of that isn't exactly lined up. It's perfectly center. So I think it actually is off balance a little bit. The right motor, I think I got that pretty well dialed in and that does glue on. It spins nice and true. So that I'm happy about. But I mean, it's my first time ever trying anything with moving parts in a model. So I'm not really surprised that I had a couple of foibles here and there. Overall though, I did get it to work. So I am happy with it. We're going to leave it as is because they function in the on-off position. So that should be perfect. Just one side won't have a resistor. The other side will. So that's going to be it, guys. We are going to call it quits for today. I want to go ahead and give this a full 24 hours before I come in and do any sort of decaling or washes or anything like that. So next episode, we'll come on back and we'll get this thing all nicely decaled, gloss coated, and then weathered down. Then, of course, we have to tackle that base. So until then, you know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool. And we'll see you back here on episode 10 of the Pearl Harbor Group Build. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you soon.